The Mahi Tahi presentation by New Zealand On Air, Te Māngai Pāho and the New Zealand Film Commission was recorded live during the 2023 SPADA conference. Some portions of this presentation may have been removed due to copyright or commercial sensitivity.
Kia ora everyone, and welcome to Mahi Tahi, a session about the potential for greater collaboration between our three main screen funding agencies. And with me I have Larry Parr, CEO of Te Māngai Pāho, Annie Murray, CEO of the New Zealand Film Commission, and Cameron, or Cam Harland, CEO of New Zealand On Air. Welcome. Welcome. How fabulous to have you all on one stage together. And Annie, I think you'd like to kick us off with a little PowerPoint on the background to Mahi Tahi. Are you going to do the technical proficiencies, or is someone else?
I think so.
Too?
I think, do I press the green button? Oh, well, te suatahi me mihi ka tika ki a koe, Irene, ki a kōrua, Cam, kōrua ko Larry, ki a koutou katoa. So if I hit the green button, yeah. So Mahi Tahi basically means working as one. And this is a project we started for a whole bunch of reasons, and there's a lot of them there. But in my second week in the job, so I started at Matariki in June, I went to a CEO's hui at the Ministry of Culture and Heritage, and it was Emily Fabling, actually, I think is here in the crowd, who said there was an expectation of collaboration between the agencies. And this is across the culture and heritage space generally. And so when Emily says we need to do something, we listen. And so it was a good opportunity for a reset with me coming in new and already knowing both Larry and Cam reasonably well, to just get together and have a kōrero about the things that we have in common and how we can collaborate for the good of the industry. So these are some of the things that were driving that conversation. So obviously this greater efficiencies stuff that's coming out of government over the last wee while. We have a shared need around te tiriti and around rautaki Māori. We all have our own rautaki Māori strategies. Obviously, technology shifts, so something we're all facing, and it's been on the agenda today already, around the ways in which audiences are consuming their content. It's a shared challenge. Inflation and cost pressures, we're all feeling that. Growing and developing diverse creative talent, and I don't need to explain that. Discoverability, obviously, a key one. Such an ocean of content out there. We all need to figure out how to get audiences to our stories. And data and insights, that's a biggie, isn't it, Cam? You've kind of been leading the charge on this with your Where Are the Audiences awesomeness every year or 2 years?
Hello. Kia ora, every year, yeah. Just to pick up a little bit on what Annie's saying, I think what's become clear is we've got more in common than not, but we're doing things in different ways. So if I look at, say, Where Are the Audiences is a good example, we are running that out on an annual basis. I think it's absolutely fundamental to a lot of the funding decisions that we're making, and is used a lot generally, and I think it's been talked about today. As a sector, we don't tell stories well enough, either good or bad. But I think being ahead of things, actually having really good data and analytics and being able to kind of talk about those stories, I think is really important. Yes, we're kind of really proud of Where Are the Audiences, but I look across at my friend Larry and the work that they've been doing around impact of the funding that Te Māngai Pāho does, and we're sort of in awe of that. So in many ways, if all of us have kind of got our own reasons why we've come together to do this, mine is definitely that. I look at what Larry's doing and go, hey, I think that could add a lot of value to what we're doing. Annie's looking at what we're doing and going, hey, that could add a lot to our mahi. So why don't we actually really get under the skin of it and understand how each of us are doing things so that we can learn from each other?
Do you want to talk about your data thing you're doing, Larry?
Kia ora. Tēnā tātou e te whare. So we were trying to judge the effectiveness of what we're doing by just looking at ratings, and obviously that's a reasonably shallow look. So what we did was we set about developing an impact model, and the basis of the impact model is that we've inserted into the Nielsen CMI our corporate segmentation questions. And so, we have a rich supply of data coming through around audiences, and we can actually segment it on all of the usual criteria, gender, ethnicity, region, etc., age. But we can also segment the audience in terms of our corporate model. And just briefly, our corporate model is 7 segments. Down the left end of the continuum, you have those that want to see Te Reo Māori dead and buried, and we know where they live. Generally speaking, they're over 65, non-Māori, Caucasian, and live in the South Island, Waiho kia mate. And then down the right end of the continuum, we have those that are actively promoting in Te Reo Māori. Generally speaking, have a strong capacity in the reo themselves. So included in the model is reach is a relatively a small component of the actual measure, but the impact on attitudes, the impact on behaviours, and the impact on whether it has an influence, which doesn't mean somebody goes and signs up to a language class. So we can score, whether the model scores each piece of content we fund gives it a score out of 100. And it's in its early stages at this point, but we think that it's going to enable us to better understand the impact of our investments.
Kia ora, Larry. Just as you were talking, I was thinking about how it's not just about measuring audience, our need around data and insights. It's also around understanding our workforce and our storytellers and who we have in Aotearoa telling stories, where they're at, where they live. All of that rich demographic data that currently is quite sparse. And I know the guilds are also working in various ways on this. And we just went to the regional film office where they're also working on their data at a regional level around understanding who they have in their rohe that can attach to production as it comes through. So another area of data that we all need to work on.
I was just going to, just a very quick segue. I think, Neva, you still here? Navak. It was a little poignant. You threw out a little whero at the end of your presentation, and it just so happened that the 3 of our logos was still sitting on the screen when you said that you need, now is the time for a kind of a cross-sector strategy, right? The coming together of us all to really think about, how we grow. And I guess that's really at the heart of what this is, right? So it's not just about the 3 of us. Obviously, we've just had all the platforms speak to this group as well. But I think the more that we can understand about what we're doing individually, learn from each other, and then take a holistic view, I think is really at the heart of it. So Larry's being really modest. I'm in awe of the work that they've done around their impact and their impact measure, and it's absolutely born out of their utter remit around language revitalisation, and that is really, really powerful. For us, we've got a broader remit, but nevertheless, we don't want to continue to measure our success on the hours that we fund. yes, ratings are important. Obviously, we want to see audiences engage with content, but we actually want to be able to see what the impact is of the content that's funded on New Zealand society. And to be honest, we're seeing more and more need for that.
Next slide.
Next slide. Okay, so these are all the things we've got in common. That text might be a little bit small, but obviously funding content, funding films, TV, and in the case of my two colleagues here, digital music, radio. They're all things that we share, and there's been a lot spoken today already about the success of Te Puna Kairangi, the Premium Fund, which was, I think, a first collaboration between all three agencies, wasn't it? Is it the first time all three?
Yeah, and now it's my turn to praise Cam because if it wasn't for Cam and Te O Kahurangi, I don't think that Te Māngai Pāho would have been at the table. So in that, all of that COVID funding that became available, there wasn't a dollar for the Māori media sector, and so our sector our cohort need to be grateful for the fact that the Film Commission and Cam got us to the table, and then I think we were able to make a positive contribution as well.
Yeah, again, I think that's a problem with the structure of the system, right? Because there should never have ever been the need for that to have happened. And again, having Te Māngai Pāho at the table, getting 2 million of that 50 set aside for development, because it was clear that in order for us to uplift Māori voices and be more inclusive with the fund, we actually needed to set aside some money for development. And it was sort of mentioned briefly today that that might have been somewhat wasteful because there's no way to see that stuff funded again. I think that's personally, I think that's a cynical view. I think that's the long tail benefit of an amazing fund, and I'm really hopeful that we're going to see many, many other productions down the line. Obviously, we're unlikely to get another 50 million.
We'll come to
you never know. But nevertheless, there's a whole bunch of other changes that we're all aware of that we'll talk about a bit later that do mean that we have a better chance than we would have to continue to support some of those productions. Sorry, Annie.
No, that's good. And of course, that dovetails beautifully into the changes with the rebate, which now enable us to collaborate on content in that way. And it also gives the Film Commission an opportunity to continue to support series drama, especially premium series drama, which has proven to be so successful. So we'll talk a little bit more about the Premium Fund after
yes, you're getting
the
ahead of yourself.
slideshow. Yeah, sorry, Irene. So there's a few other things on our list there. Promoting funded content, which is quite a hard thing to do, isn't it? I mean, especially getting off-platform promotion. So the platforms are all good at doing their promotion within their own universe, their own ecosystem, but getting promotion outside of that is expensive and difficult. But you've been doing some interesting stuff in the children's space, haven't you, Cam?
Yeah, I mean, increasingly we are, again, it's been talked about a lot this morning already, right, that we're seeing audiences fragment. So they're consuming as much as ever, but they're consuming on a bunch of different platforms in many different places. So I think at the heart of this for us is we're starting to do, and not in a major way, we're obviously still really focused on spending as much money as we possibly can on content outcomes, but there's no point in funding content if people don't know about it and if they don't know where to find it. So we have started doing a little bit of work in that space, which again, you've done. The Film Commission's obviously always been in the business of promoting the films that they fund. So again, we're starting to sort of creep gently into areas of commonality, which again is why I think coming together to understand, how have you done it over the years? Can we learn from what you're doing? Is really important. The same with sort of screen practitioner development. Again, we traditionally just saw our role as funding content. Well, if we're not seeing enough Māori creative content coming to us, we can't just sit there and say, oh, well, we won't fund anymore. We actually have to be a part of the solution. So again, taking baby steps into a space that you've been in for a long, long time. So we kind of need to work together to make sure that we're not stepping on each other's toes, but also learning from each other.
Are you saying you're funding talent development now, Cam?
Just a little bit.
A little bit. A little bit.
Just within the realms of our legislative remit, which is quite narrow. Oh. So we're still trying to ensure that we are keeping within our remit. But yes.
Good. Yes, that was the answer. That's the bit I heard. Because, we spend over $3 million a year on what we're currently calling talent development, but it also includes business development and a whole range of things, tuakana taina, mentoring, loads of stuff that helps to uplift the industry across the board. And it would be great to share some of that, what should I call it? I was going to say some of that load with my two colleagues here. But Larry, where are you at in that space in terms of developing?
I thought she was facilitating.
No, she's coming back after the slideshow.
We spend funding on capacity building in the sector, workforce development. Not as much as you, obviously, but I think that we all understand there's a growing need for workforce development, and it makes sense that we collaborate on that and get the balance right. Because I think working in silos has contributed to some challenges for the sector. So it makes a hell of a lot of sense to me for us to be working collaboratively.
Awesome. The other bit there on the bottom left, supporting the sector through advocacy, health and safety, inclusivity, sustainability, that in our remit is kind of connected to the talent development. It's all under that industry development stuff. And then, of course, the research and insights, data and insights stuff that we've already talked about. The approach we're taking to this project is that we have a process underway already to figure out how to work together. So how to figure out a model for this collaboration. Cam, you're probably best versed in how that's working.
This is probably sort of getting into the meat and three veg. It's really just the process that we're following, which is we've brought in Anru to basically kind of delve into a whole bunch of our policies, our processes, just spending some time with our documents to start with. They're going to kind of try and get an understanding of kind of what we're doing, what we're not, what the gap analysis is, refine a sort of a framework of what they believe that they're seeing, and then spend some time with us. I think the example of that kind of industry development is a classic one, right? So we're all doing our own bits. We don't really genuinely know what each of us are doing in that space, even down to how much money we're spending, let alone the initiatives that we have. So I think the starting point is like a big audit that just sort of says, here's what you're doing, here's how you're doing it. If you sort of stop and think about it at a really basic level, like we all fund content. We probably all go about that process in slightly different ways, whether that be the way that we assess, the people that we use to assist us, the papers that are written, the approval processes that we put in place, the way that we report. All of those things will be slightly different. And if we can kind of learn from each other and work out best practice through that, then I think that's just going to be a good thing. But Larry makes a good point. The other side of this is, are there going to be ways that we can streamline the process for you? So you know which door to come through. Or maybe there's one door and we kind of work out what that looks like. That's really getting ahead of ourselves. But, in an ideal scenario, Larry, I think you were talking before about, a shared portal perhaps.
Yeah, so, what if you only had to fill out one registration form for becoming a registered provider or an applicant to all three, and there was a database that was consistent across all three. It also would help us in terms of collecting data. So for us to have a single data pot that we can all cut and dice to meet our own particular needs would be really good. So and so applicants and who's getting funding and where the funding's going would all be much easier if we were working from a single database, and we'd get a big picture of the sector. We'd know where the needs were, and yeah.
I just want to ask a question because I suspect I'm not the only person thinking, what does that mean? Confirm operating model based on the brief received with sponsor. I assume that means with staff champion rather than that we're suddenly going to have...
Sponsor is in the person in the organisation, not Bunnings.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
That's what I was just, because to producers that is Bunnings. Anything else on that? Oh, no, we're moving on.
So this is basically what's happening, and the timeline is quite
I think
short.
you said you needed it before Christmas.
Before
Annie.
Christmas, I did say that. Is it happening like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is, eh? Yeah. Okay, so, that's basically how we're going about it, and we should have a report back before Christmas that will help us to figure out our next steps. Oh, that's right, we've got some clips to show you.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry,
Come on,
Irene.
Annie. Ask for a moderator.
I can't go backwards, can I?
So naughty.
That's a nice picture.
So, yes, we had a lovely little PowerPoint there, which I was then going to ask a few questions about, but they free-formed. They free-formed and they answered a lot of the questions. So that's good. That's good. But we will come back with some possible other questions on the PowerPoint and some specifics. But before we get on to that, obviously, a successful recent collaboration between the three of you was the Premium Fund, Te Puna Kairangi. And yes, I believe we have some clips from some upcoming productions. Would you like to introduce them, Annie?
Yes, the first one is from The Convert, which is a very beautiful and epic film produced by Robin Scholes. Mihi to Robin here hiding up the back, and directed by Lee Tamahori, and it is their third, and Robin tells me last, collaboration. It's a beautiful film and will be out early next year. The next one is a premium factual series, Black Coast Vanishings, based on some of the missing persons cases out on West Coast beaches out west of Auckland. And the third and final clip is from After the Party, which I'm sure many of you have watched a couple of eps of already. I binged all 6 in about half a day.
It's been so great seeing these projects come through, the Premium Fund projects. We've seen The Gone, we've seen Far North After the Party's screening. It was a pandemic initiative that I assume is unlikely to be repeated in this form, but the recent opening up of the rebate across all productions, NZ On Air, TMP, NZFC, always, should perhaps help us keep that pace on international co-productions. Would any of you like to comment on that? Is it a fair comment?
Yeah, look, I think Larry and I both use the term game changer a lot in reference to Puna Kairangi, possibly more than the Film Commission because of the fact that we could access the rebate alongside Te Puna Kairangi funds and our respective baseline funds as well. So what it meant was you could leverage an awful lot of funds to deliver much more ambitious projects, of course still needing international money. And very good question, Irene, you're absolutely right. The fact that the rebate changes have come in, and I want to acknowledge, I don't think Emily is in the room, but Carl and Elise are from MCH, and they really did do fantastic work on that. I mean, we really only had one change we wanted, and we stayed outside our lane because the level of sort of sophistication and knowledge that sits within the Film Commission in relation to the rebate is significantly more than we had. But all we wanted was an ability for us to be able to put baseline funds alongside the rebate, and Larry was exactly the same. And that does mean that we have an opportunity to fund more and more ambitious projects. And again, there's no reason why we can't come together and jointly potentially put in our baseline funds alongside rebate to see those projects away.
The other really important collaboration that's been on the cards for a few years now is the Te Māngai Pāho NZ On Air co-fund. How many years? 5, 6, 7, 4?
I think we're in our 4th year this year.
4th year.
Yeah.
What is the latest on that?
So there'll be an RFP out in the next couple of weeks, and the round will open before Christmas and stay open until early Feb. I think that we've touched on access to the rebate, and the conversations that Cam and I have had are that we will be a little bit aspirational in the projects that we're hoping to get into the co-fund this year, and we'll probably be looking to prefer projects that might qualify for the rebate. If none of them come in, well, we won't be able to prefer them. But I think that, and going forward, I think that's an opportunity for us to. It's not the same volume of dollars, but it's an opportunity for us to try and continue the momentum that we got with the Te Puna Kairangi.
So perhaps aim quite big on the co-fund this year. Quite. Bigger productions, co-productions, rebate productions.
Yeah, it's likely that we will be preferring projects that have a likelihood of going for the rebate.
And between us, that's 8 million. So it's a meaningful number. If I look at our special scripted round, which was obviously set aside, waiting and hoping for the rebate changes. Off the top of my head, I think we had about 12. I think we put in about 12.4 mil for 4 projects with a total budget of sort of 36 mil. So you can sort of see how a chunk of baseline alongside rebate, alongside some of that international money, can really deliver something pretty meaningful.
And some great shows have come out of that initiative. Is Casketeers come out of that originally?
Out of the co-fund?
Casketeers? No. Might have been a TVNZ initiative.
I think that actually, no, we ended up funding the first 2 or 3 series ourselves. I think you co-funded, co-fund now, but it doesn't actually come through the co-fund round.
Larry, a question for you, just Mahi Tahi generally and collaboration generally. Do you see it as a way of getting more Māori content, more te reo Māori, more tikanga Māori, more support for Māori content creators, kind of across the board? Do you see this work as helping you with that?
Yes.
Good answer.
But I think
How?
that, just even look at the what we've got out of the co-fund. We've actually managed to get, I believe we've expanded the pool of money available to Māori content by working with New Zealand On Air. And in an area where we couldn't do it alone because, we just don't have the baseline to do that. So, and at the same time, we've helped New Zealand On Air achieve their aspirations, or some of their aspirations, in terms of Māori language content and Māori kaupapa content.
And just to pick up on that, because that's absolutely right, part of the thinking behind this Mahi Tahi, I think, is to see how we might embed some of these things, right? So the co-fund is brilliant. It works really well for both parties, but at the moment it's kind of, to be fair, it predates me, but it's sort of born out of a really good relationship between Larry and I, which is great, but actually it needs to be more than that. So an idea where you sort of get some kind of specific agreement to working together that goes out over time, I think, is really what the sector kind of needs. It's, again, I think, coming back to the word certainty that was used a few times this morning.
One of the things I've been thinking about with Mahi Tahi, we're all aware that the economy's tough and pressures are tight, and there's going to be pressure on government spending. And I guess, I'm not quite sure how to phrase this, but I think I'm hoping that something like this is not a cost saving because there'll be less government funding. It's making the money that we already have go further, which as an industry is a sensible thing for us to do because it makes us look efficient. Is that kind of the philosophy that you think is a part of this?
Yeah, I think that does reflect the kaupapa. Yeah, we're not looking at saving money to give it back to MCH, if you want to put it that way. Sorry, Carl. We're looking at being more efficient, and being more efficient both within our organisations, but also more efficient for the industry.
I think, efficiency is good, but I think, what we should focus on is being better, and getting better outcomes. And that, to me, is what the real opportunity is, we've been trundling along our journey for quite some time, and now we actually have an opportunity to say, well, actually, we can do better here. And to me, that's a priority, and that's why we're so interested in, at the moment, working out what data sets we can collect, but then now how can we use these data sets to actually help our sector be better right across the board.
It does seem to totally make sense for the three of you to work more closely together. And yeah, I mean, just picking up from the PowerPoint, the big ones really seem to be data and shared data and insights, potentially sharing PR, marketing, that whole area, and however you describe it, industry support and the different aspects of that. So they seem to me like the logical things to work on.
I think they're the logical, tactical things. Sort of coming back to Larry's point, though, I mean, you kind of go, look, we are, one way or another, we're probably touching everyone in this room in our respective sort of organisations. We're talking about, the biggest part of our job, the stuff we get out of bed in the morning to do, is to fund the creation of content, right? And content's a horrible name, but nevertheless, we're out, we're all procuring stuff that we're going to watch. So, James Cameron talked this morning about grips and dollies and, we have to have an overview of that. We actually have to take a sector-wide view and kind of go, listen, let's make sure that we really understand what's going on. And if we understand what's going on, then maybe we can be a part of the solution. And I guess that's a segue into just acknowledging the work that SPADA's done today, the last few days, pushing really hard for more engagement from the streamers. And, again, I think that's something that we all have a view around as well. I'm not sure necessarily that a tax, a levy, is going to be the most straightforward thing. If we're talking about having to engage with our Inland Revenue Department and then assuming that the tax would then filter back through to us, that would be great. But actually it may be that, and you and I just had this conversation, it may be that it's more sensible just to simply force these guys to the table and say, you are going to be required to act like a local platform. You are going to have to commission local content.
I mean, that's certainly, just to go back to Love Local and the Streamers campaign, for simplicity of, really getting media coverage and, therefore getting government traction, we've kind of gone a levy, a percentage of New Zealand revenue back through the agencies because it's a straightforward thing. But there are obviously lots of different ways to skin that. And, it will be up to the government ultimately to decide that. But, yeah, and we have a slightly tricky thing in New Zealand because some territories are going for a quota and we have difficulty with that because of a trade agreement that we have. But, it might be that maybe it's a voluntary quota. And maybe it is just, you work in our territory, could you do 4 significant New Zealand commissions a year? And then maybe we wouldn't require your levy. I mean, as I say, there's lots of different ways to look at it. And I think the good thing is that I think as an industry, and it's come up in different ways today, and I'm sure it will tomorrow, we are all aware that we need to get more money into our industry somehow. And, we can't expect that will all be government money. Some of it has got to come from maybe the streamers contributing. Obviously our producers are getting more entrepreneurial, they're getting more international money in. Not that is easy to do, but, great work is being done in that. So, yeah, it's an ongoing... I mean, this is a slightly rogue question, and there probably isn't an answer, but, I mean, is there any way that any of the funding agencies could get other money that isn't the government money that we get? Is there any way of getting other money? I mean, you get some lotto money.
Yeah, we do. We get some Lottery Grants Board money. But just going back to the quota word, which I think is actually not a particularly helpful word in the current climate, I think it's more helpful to talk about criteria for local content, criteria for local stories. And just to note that Netflix are already engaged in this territory. And they are funding Jane Campion's film school, A Wave in the Ocean, substantially. So they are doing that obviously to maintain a relationship with Jane, but also because they're very interested in talent coming out of New Zealand. When we go overseas, and I'm sure some of you find this when you're at international markets and festivals, there's an enormous interest in talent from this part of the world, and particularly Indigenous talent. So what Jane is doing in that film school is extraordinary, actually, and she's doing it pro bono. She doesn't take a fee. She's giving her time because she's ready to give back. And one of the lovely things that I've noted in just 4 months in the job is how generous our seniors, our veterans of the industry are towards the next generations. We're seeing a real aroha and manaakitanga coming from that generation. And to see Netflix backing that is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I just want to acknowledge that.
Yeah, no, it's really good to hear that, and we can build off the back of those kinds of things. And James Cameron kind of mentioned that a little bit this morning as well. I'm going to hand over and see if there's any audience questions soon, because I think we're coming fairly near the end of our time. But I haven't asked the obvious question, which is, does this shadow a future where we are all together? Or is it more that if you just work closely together, it's kind of the same thing anyway? Who wants to try that one?
That one, what you said.
The last bit?
Yeah.
You just do it, and then whatever... Because in the end, none of us can control that, how we get structured and so on and so forth. So if you do sensible collaborative things in the meantime, you just see that where that takes you. Anyone got a better answer?
Pretty sensible, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think Larry's forming a better answer.
I think that, well, it's working well so far and we're making good progress. I think one of the other things that we all need to remember, though, that, we all have specific statutory remits and my key stakeholder, Te Reo Māori, is not going to let me weaken my commitment to Te Reo Māori.
Nor would you want it to. I think that's a really, that's a good answer. We have our own remits. We are increasingly seeing more things in common than not. So it definitely makes sense for us to try and learn from each other and acknowledge each other's mahi and try and make sure that we're kind of aligned and integrated. All of that other stuff is really kind of noise. And in all honesty, I think there is an expectation. There's an expectation from the incoming government. I actually think that, to be honest, there's just a logic to us being efficient, trying to be better, trying to do more with what we have for the sectors that we support. So that's what this is.
It doesn't make a lot of sense to be inefficient, can we? That would be a bad move. I know you sort of half answered this when we were going through the PowerPoint, Annie, but how long does this process take? Like when might we have some tangible results?
Well, I think what we're getting is a report with a bit of a plan before Christmas. That's the idea.
And so then that rolls out over next year?
Yeah, we'll regroup early next year and figure out how that's going to work, and then we'll start talking about it, I guess.
Yeah, and I imagine it will be, there will be priorities and some of them some moves that might be less of a priority in terms of, what we focus on. But, as we've said a number of times, I think data and insights is a space where we can work together. We've talked about PR, and pub promotions. We haven't been engaged in that space. We have a comms person. The first time we've had a comms person at Māngai Pāho. But we can actually piggyback off the capacity of New Zealand On Air in that space when we have a project that we want to promote. So it makes a lot of sense for us to be more aligned.
Would anyone like to ask any questions from the floor? I mean, loosely within the Mahi Tahi, because obviously you'll get a chance to talk to Cameron and Annie at their own sessions. Is that Summer? Yes, it is. There was a strange halo over you, Summer, and I couldn't see you.
Because I'm an angel. Tēnā rā tātou, and nei rā aku mihi kia koutou, ngā tumu whakarai. You all know me, I like specifics, so I'm coming back to the co-fund. I'm only aware of one Māori production company that's ever got a SPIG, it was SPIG at the time, Spur project up. I really love the aspiration, and I know it's part of what you came in with your kaupapa too, Annie, like you talked about ensuring that our Māori and Pacific production companies are able to access that. My question is, do you think we are ready to do that now?
I think there's been about 4 or 5 sums, to be honest, but you might be thinking of one for television and the others were films, yeah. As to whether we're ready for that as an industry, okay, who'd like to answer that?
We're going to talk a little bit about this tomorrow. So the rebate is really, really new for us. And I mentioned before that we put a special scripted round out in the hope that the rebate would change. And so it did. And we put first in money into 4 projects. Now, there's a bit of a bubbling debate around whether we should be first in or we should be gap. We took the view, based upon feedback from producers that have used the rebate before, that first in is actually it's a good way to start. It's definitely a good way to start for some that haven't done this before to a certain extent, because they've got money that they can then go to the market with, as opposed to going to the market first and then coming back. We are going to learn a lot though, so we're not completely sure whether that's going to work out. We're really hopeful, but I guess in a similar vein, that's what Larry's talking about, is like we've got this new tool in our toolbox. Let's try and use it. And if we can see something that's going to, change the game and deliver more ambition, then we should try, I guess is the point.
Alice, I think you had a question, or...
Thank you. I'm very keen to know a bit more about the data. Data is something I love, and I'm also thinking about the workforce development planning and the capacity and capability issues that we have within the industry. As you're looking to, and I love that, Larry, I think if you can all have a combined one portal, one door to enter in, collect the data from that way would be amazing, because what we're missing when it comes to building our capacity and capability is there are a lot of people that are invisible from a data perspective, particularly in below the line. You're not seeing specific crew numbers, particularly from emerging crew. Below HODs, we don't see them. How are you going to collect that kind of data when you start moving through this data collection process?
What I would say, it's an idea at the moment, and I think that we're going to have to come back and talk to the sector about how we do that. We don't want to increase the level of compliance. What we want it to be is organic as possible in terms of collecting the data through, the application process, and I don't know all of the answers, but I think what I see as being valuable is having a database that holds all of the information about who worked on what, when.
Did you just volunteer, data nerd Alice?
Just to add to that, I think this is fundamental stuff, right? I mean, we should know who's working in our industry. If we want to tell better stories about the economic value, the cultural value, the need for uplifting or workforce development, then we actually need to start with some baseline. So we kind of collect our own data at the moment. It's relatively manual, but it delivers a really meaningful, we call it the diversity report. It's been published for about the last 6 or 7 years. But again, it's crazy for us to do that when I've got my partners to my right that are also funding probably literally the same people in other productions that we're not capturing that data in. So the starting point is to say, let's come together. What we kind of want is agreement from the sector that this is a really good idea. And then obviously there's some things we need to deal with. I mean, data is difficult. Data sovereignty is something that we need to consider. But if we kind of start from the basis of, hey, look, we're not doing this for anything other than it's going to be beneficial, whether it be bringing more money to the table or ensuring that people are safe and looked after and all of those things.
Any other questions?
Just to add to that, in the UK there's the Diamond Scheme, which all broadcasters subscribe to. And when you deliver to that platform, you report against that platform, and it's to record diversity, and it's a central database. So once a crew member's name is in there, it is in there. So yeah, there's international precedents that we could very easily pick up. We don't have to invent this from scratch.
Thank you, Richard. We've got about 4 minutes to go, so unless someone has a really burning question... Oh, there is a burning question. No? Stretching? Looked like stretching.
Is there a real danger, as I sit here with my right-wing hat on, thinking that we should merge all three organisations into one major organisation and save all the back office money that we would save? Is that a danger you have with Mahi Tahi?
Irene just gave me the answer. That's why we want to be efficient now. So, in many ways, getting ahead of it. I mean, the reality is, you could save a few bucks, right? In all honesty, merging the organisations, we all run pretty lean operations. We're certainly not, hundreds and hundreds of staff. So the reality is, you would do this because it makes sense from a sector perspective. And to be honest, as Larry quite rightly pointed out, there is real strength and value in having the remits that we have that are different, but driving as much efficiency as we can. I mean, look, maybe it's a danger. I mean, to a certain extent, we just keep calm and carry on that front, I think.
I think we've pretty much come to the end of our time. I might just do a very, very quick, just always nice to have a little positive thing. Annie, in the not this calendar year, but in the last financial year, what were the 3 films that cracked $1 million at the box office? I can tell you them. One was Red, White and Brass.
Red, White and Brass. Muru. And probably Uproar will be getting close.
I was going to say Fina.
Cousins.
I was going to say Fina.
Cousins, yes, and Fina.
Yeah.
Cousins did, yeah.
Interesting how they often have Pacifica or Māori themes.
That's right.
And anything fabulous you'd like to talk about in one sentence? You did it last night in your speech.
Yeah, I did last night. I mean, we've talked about Te Puna Kairangi. I think my head of comms, Alana, put a massive shout out to the numbers that we're seeing for After the Party, I think. Was it After the Party? These shows are really, really, really resonating with New Zealanders. After the Party, The Gone, Far North. There's something in this. There's some gold in this. I mean, I also talked about Creamery and Inky Pinky Ponky and a whole bunch of other beautiful kind of shows. Rurangi, Craig's here, I think. There's a... For us, there's so much joy in the massive diversity of projects that we fund, that small and big, and I know that there's a call for kind of being a little bit more focused, but actually we're really, really proud of a number of the projects that aren't necessarily the really, really big budget, really premium ones, and I think a number of the platforms talked about those today as well. They're shows that everyone's proud of, and they do really well. So.
I do want to talk about something that I'm really proud of, but first I just add to Tony's comment and say that, there's probably an equal risk that people might think of merging Te Māngai Pāho, Whakaata Māori, and Te Taurā Whiri into one entity, So, I mean, we can't get hung up on, what might happen. We just need to continue trying to get on and do the best we can with what we've got. In terms of something that I'm really proud of our involvement in is Matariki. I think that, it was a game changer for lots of reasons. There, I use that word again. Mostly because of the impact it had on our nation, but secondly, I think that we were able, as an agency, we were able to get collaboration across platforms in a way that hadn't been done before, and now. I see that the same is happening in other spaces like Waitangi Day, and I think what we need to recognise is that with taxpayer money is a scarce resource, and that it behoves all of us to get the best bang for that buck that we can, and that's getting the content to as many eyeballs as we can in as many places as we can.
Thank you all, ngā mihi to you all for doing this today. It's really amazing to have all three of you on stage together, and I really appreciate that.